MyCEcourse.com. More than training, a real partner in human resources.
Can I just have your name and tell me why you decided to do this project?
Well, my name's JoAnna Michaels. And I decided to do this project like I decided to do a lot of these projects. It's about education. And if we're to get, the transgender community accepted, we have to go out and speak about it and unwrap the mystery for the transgender folks, as well as people that are trying to deal with transgender friends and family. And so that's why, and this project just sounded perfect. And, I loved that you asked me, so.
Tell me about your life before your transition. You had a series of very successful careers, a successful marriage, a very successful life.
Yeah, that's how I look at it. But I grew up in Joliet, Illinois. I knew, at a very early age, and the studies, like I mentioned before, is tell me that I know my gender at 3. So at 6 or 7, I was struggling, trying to figure out who I was. And my parents were constantly redirecting me, so I knew there was something they didn't like about how I was acting. Apparently, I was a little too feminine. When I talked, I used, my hands, and everything was involved, like any woman. And no, you can't do that. And
did they encourage you to play sports, or?
They encouraged me to play sports, and I was a pretty good athlete, but I didn't want to go out for Little League, but my brother did. So then I had to go out because they embarrassed me into it, and didn't make the team, and I was happy. My dad was disappointed. So I was getting that constant reinforcement that you're our son, and these things that you do, they're going to get you in trouble. You're going to get beat up a lot, is kind of how I took it. And so at an early age, I started to understand that I needed to be their son, and I needed to hide all my feminine characteristics and feelings. I used to cry easily, and then, no, not allowed to cry. So I really had to work at that, because I cry at a drop of a hat, and I still do, but for the longest time I just, would not let myself get there.
And you grew up in the 60s hardcore Midwest.
Yeah, it was very blue-collar town, and I was growing up in the 50s and 60s. And all through high school, I was trying to find a way to make sure that I was the macho son that they wanted. And I had to work my way through high school because they wanted me to go to private school, and we couldn't afford it, but you can always work. So I worked. And I was working at a 7-Up plant, and so I was building all these muscles, and I was not happy about it on one hand, and then going, oh, well, maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. So, I worked at a 7-Up plant, and I was really hidden, so I wasn't getting direct harassment. But I remember a high school kid that was very, everybody in town knew about her, and called names, and, so I knew that, that's how I am, and I shouldn't probably think I should come out. So I just stayed hidden all through my youth, and as would happen during Vietnam, I ran out of money in college, and I knew I was going to get drafted, so I joined the Air Force. And the Air Force, I was supposed to go into electronics, and it was pretty archaic back in those days, but it didn't. None of the jobs sounded interesting. Like, no, I don't want to do that. So I volunteered, and I listened to pararescue, who was recruiting, and survival instructors, and combat controllers, and 2 of them jumped out of airplanes, and I said, no, I'm afraid of heights, not a good choice. So I chose survival, and they accepted me, and I became a survival instructor. And I figured, wow, this is so macho. And, you know, I'm sure my parents were going, all right. And I became a survival instructor, and I volunteered to go to school. I went to school in Panama, in the Panama Canal Zone, went to school in Alaska, and I volunteered for everything to promote myself. But what I forgot was jump school was one of the things that I wound up volunteering for. And I just wasn't. So I got a jump slot, and they sent me to Fort Benning, Georgia. And I tried to get out of it, but my boss just looked at me like, that ain't gonna happen. So I went to jump school, and I did my 5 jumps. And I can remember my last 2 jumps, I had strep throat, but I wasn't gonna give up because I wanted to get out of there.
MyCEcourse.com. More than training, a real partner in human resources.